Welcome to the book thing. I'm Mark, and today I'm going to give you my June TBR from the side of a mountain in North Wales. So I thought I'd mix things up and get a bit of fresh air today. The first thing on my list for June is White Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys. This is a prequel to Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. So, spoilers for the 150-year-old classic novel Jane Eyre, but this is the telling of the story of Rochester's first wife, who ends up as the mad woman in the attic. And this is a feminist retelling which gives the story from her perspective, whereas originally in Jane Eyre it is entirely from Rochester, as in the male perspective of the story. So I'm looking forward to reading that. And while I'm going down the feminist literature rabbit hole, the second thing that I've been eyeing up on my shelf this month is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, which I've never actually read. Now, from what I understand, it's a semi-autobiographical novel by Sylvia Plath, who is someone who suffered from mental health issues. So, interesting to see what that's about. The next novel is Butter by Asako Yuzuki. I don't know very much about this one. I picked it up in a bookshop and it looked really intriguing. From what I understand, it's the story of a journalist who goes to interview a serial killer who has killed a number of men, and from what I understand, cooking plays a large part in that story. So to me, it sounded like Silence of the Lambs, and anything that sounds like Silence of the Lambs, I'm in. This month I'm a wee bit reluctant to start any new sci-fi or fantasy series after how the Three Body Problem and the Farseer trilogy ended last month. So I'm going to read a couple of standalones. First one I have my eye on is Babel by R.F. Kuang, which, from what I understand, is a fantasy set in an alternate Oxford in the mid 19th century, and it's about a British Empire that's economy is centered around these magical silver bars, and it's something to do with language and translation as well. Beyond that, I don't really know, so looking forward to seeing what that one's like. The next standalone I'm thinking about is This Is How You Lose the Time War by, I'm going to get this wrong, Amal Al-Mutar and Max Gladstone. And again, it's another short sci-fi standalone. And from what I understand, it's about two people operating on opposite sides of a time war who fall in love with each other. So that'll be interesting to see. The other standalone fantasy I'm hoping to read this month is Tress of the Emerald Sea, which was one of the Kickstarter projects of Brandon Sanderson. It is set in his Cosmere world, but I think it's a standalone story, and from what I understand, it's about a girl who was brought up on an isolated island, and then things happen and she is forced to go on an adventure across the ocean. Should be interesting. The plan, as always, is to read some Discworld novels. Next ones on my list are Men at Arms, Soul Music, and Interesting Times. I usually read about 3 or 4 a month, but I suspect this month I might only read about 2 because of all of the other things I have on my list. I've got a couple of short sci-fi stories that I want to read as well. The first one is I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, which wins the award for Best Title of the Month. This is a short story by Harlan Ellison, who's the great sci-fi writer who wrote a load of episodes of things like The Outer Limits and The Twilight Zone, and he wrote the most famous Star Trek original series episode, an episode called City on the Edge of Forever, which is one of the best episodes of Star Trek. And this story was recommended to me by my 13-year-old daughter, and from what I understand, it's kind of a horror sci-fi story and has to do with AI, so that should be an interesting and quite relevant one. Also, I'm thinking about Who Goes There by John W. Campbell. I've never actually read it, but it is the short story which is the inspiration for one of my favourite films ever, which is John Carpenter's The Thing. So presumably it's set in an Antarctic research station where something gets dug up from the ice and people start to die. A book that's been bothering my TBR for quite some time now is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. That was actually recommended to me by my brother. Again, I don't know very much about it. I like to go into books quite blind. From what I understand, it's the story of a group of students who come under the influence of this professor, and at some point some tragedy happens. We shall see. but it is highly recommended, and I'm really looking forward to reading that one. As if all that wasn't enough, I am considering delving back into Stephen King for the very first time in a long time this month, and the one that's on my mind is 11/22/63, which is a reference to the date that John F. Kennedy was killed. And this, what I understand, is about a guy who goes back in time and makes it his mission to prevent the assassination of John F. Kennedy. As if all that wasn't enough, I am on the lookout for a new crime or thriller series to get into. Normally, as a bit of a palate cleanser, I will read either a Lee Child Jack Reacher book or a David Baldacci Amos Decker book, but I find myself, for the first time that I can remember, having caught up entirely with both series. So what I'm really looking for is a recommendation of another thriller series that I can get into. So maybe another David Baldacci one, maybe someone else like Karen Slaughter or Patricia Cornwell or someone. I would really appreciate if you have a recommendation of a series that I can get my teeth into that's not going to require too much thought and effort on my part, but something I can just switch off and enjoy. I'd really like to hear your comments below. So before the wick picks up any more and I'm going to be forced to stop doing this, I just want to thank you all for watching. If you'd like to see how I get on with any of these books, please consider hitting the subscribe button, and please comment down below with any suggestions of crime or thriller series that you think I might enjoy. Thanks very much for watching. Take care.